I don't know what that means. I don't know what Duck Dynasty is. People keep using that term, but I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Mike is one of my favorite people. Him and Kathy have been coming to my classes for many, many years. I appreciate him. The imminent return of Christ. What does the imminent mean? What? Well, it's not threatening to happen at any moment. Immediately. It can happen any time. The imminent return of Christ. Now, we have had we're going to get into this, the 4 blood moons, the new galaxies, the new something going on all the time. There are more people hollering on the coming of the Lord that it has destroyed the truth about the coming of the Lord. All right? I'm going to read. This was my textbook. This textbook was written in 1949, so they left a lot out that's happened in the meanwhile. When I'm going to read from this, you can fill in the lines because there's a whole lot of things happened between 1949 and now. Harold Camping came on the scene, for one thing. How many times did Harold Camping predict the end? Was it 4 times? 4 different times, I believe, that he predicted the end was coming. I mean, the very day. The Jehovah's Witnesses, how many times? Yeah, well, 1975 was the end. You know, that was the end. 1914, 1878, I believe. Yeah, yes. That's all happened. I know many people. I've dealt with a lot of people in Jehovah's Witnesses because I teach Greek. You know, they're interested in Greek, but when they really find out, it throttles them. You know, when they really get into the Greek. Charles Taze Russell prophesied the end several times, and Judge Rutherford did also. The last big event was in 1975, I believe, and many people sold everything they had, and they built great big super assembly halls. That word assembly hall is a scriptural word because the word church isn't really in the Bible, so to speak. It's assembly, the assembly, all right? And anyway, they did that, and then a lot of people fell by the wayside after that didn't happen. We had the 4 blood moons happen this last week, didn't we? Oh, it's going to be, the end is now. I had people talking to me on the radio, you know, what about this, what about this? And I said, I don't get all excited about all this stuff. I'm not real excited about all of the things that happen. Halley's Comet. I had one of my very close friends that prophesied and wrote a series of books that when Halley's Comet came, what year was that? 1970 something, I believe. When Halley's Comet came, that was going to be the end. That was when it was going to hit the earth and all that kind of stuff. Okay? People are very ignorant when it comes to the Bible. A lot of people are religious, but they'll say, I believe in this. And I ask them, I said, did you read the Bible? No. I believe this. We have an instruction manual called the Bible that tells us all about that. And they have all types of wild ideas. And some religions are eclectic. Can you name me a religion that is eclectic? Eclectic. It picks out everything that they like about one thing and about this thing and about this thing, and they just cram them all together.
Church of Christ. Shoot, I could go on and on.
Well,
Free Will Baptists, they pick out the things they like, and the things they don't like, they throw away.
Well, the Free Will Baptists are what we call hyper-Armenian. Okay, they're not Baptists at all. Never were. Never have been. All right.
Starts with B, but I can't remember. Maybe it'll come.
The Baha'i. Baha'i.
Yeah.
The Baha'i. I've been in the Baha'i Gardens in Tel Aviv. There's a lot of religions that talk about the end times. Every cult talks about the end times, don't they? Every cult. Jehovah's Witness, something's going to happen. Seventh-day Adventists, something's going to happen. Mormonism, they have their whole doctrine is 7 years of preparations when you're going to go into this 7 years of that's the whole story, you know. And they do all this canning. They have canning classes. They do all this food and all kinds. This is a religion. They're a religion to them. Okay, all of this is part of the religion. Harold Camping, his group that was, I mean, really had wonderful. If you listen to family radio, that's some of the greatest music this side of heaven, really. Actually, family radio uses a lot of Valley Baptist Church's music years ago when the choir, you know, when it was traditional. They use a lot of our traditional music on there. You will hear it. You will hear George Beverly Shea. You'll hear all of the traditional. And people go and listen to that by the thousands simply for the music. And then he pours out this conglomerated, eclectic, weird doctrine. I've heard people say, but they listen to all of the music, and then when he comes on, they turn it off. Well, they find out what it is. Let me read to you what Thiessen said in his lectures in systematic theology. Okay, this is really a good book, even though in some way it's out of date. It was written in 1949, but it's really great because you can find a lot of stuff. Also, Strong's Systematic Theology. It's about that thick. Mike, don't you have that book? Strong's Systematic Theology? Yeah, it's really good. It's really a thick good. It's really good. These systematic theologies, they will tell you all the different doctrines of different people and how that they got mixed up and confused, and sometimes why they did it, the leaders that led them in that way. All right. The early churches were keenly interested in the doctrine of the return of Christ. We find that. 300 times the imminent return of Christ is mentioned in the New Testament. 300 times in the New Testament. It's mentioned a lot of times in the Old Testament. But 300 times the imminent return of Christ is mentioned in the New Testament. Every 25 verses, it talks about judgment or the return of Christ. Okay? Now, last week we talked, the title of the message was Sleepers in the Dust and the Resurrection, the Anastasia. And this week we're kind of expanding on that just a little bit, and we're going to go a little bit further. I want you to understand, looking at the chart up here is very important. If you don't have one of these things, ask me. We'll get one of these for you, a little one, handout. We have down through here, from eternity past to eternity future, we have God's plan of the ages. We live in the church age probably around here, okay? The things that we're talking about in Easter and all that stuff took place over here, right here, just before the cross, all right? Now the church age, during the church age, we find out that Israel would reject Christ in the very beginning. Israel would reject Christ, and that God would turn from Israel to the Gentiles. And that the Gentile church was even prophesied in the book of Genesis. In the book of Genesis to Noah. Okay? It talked about Japheth dwelling in the tents of Shem. Shem was the monument or the people of God that would bring the Bible and biblical truth to the people. But in the last days we find this. One thing that I want you to understand that all the false religionists say is that the church of the Lord Jesus Christ died. We know that's a lie because Jesus Christ said his church wouldn't die. I'll be with you until the end of the church age. So we know that the true churches will be here all through the church age. That's another fact. Okay? That is another fact. Israel would be dispersed. One thing about eschatology you can always tell, Israel is still on the outs with God. I want you to understand, they are not following God yet. Israel was dispersed. Israel was dispersed even back here, weren't they? During this period of time, they had the Babylonian captivity, the Syrian captivity, all of this. But Israel was extremely in the diaspora, is what it's called, dispersed, when they rejected their Messiah. It was pretty much curtains for them. All right? But one indicator that the end of the church age is coming is what? The regathering of Israel. What was it, May the 18th, 1948? Israel became a nation again. That should have said something right there. Beep, beep, beep. Now, if you believe in what we call replacement theology, what is replacement theology? What's replacement theology? All you
Christian church, or that took over Israel's place.
That's right. What replacement theology is, they think that the church claimed all the promises of Israel, and Israel is set aside forever. Okay, now there's some truth to some of that. Israel will never be the bride ever again. Israel was supposed to be the bride of God, but Israel lost her standing. God divorced Israel forever. Did you hear that? God divorced Israel forever as the bride. Okay? When Jesus Christ came in person, in the Old Testament, when Abraham was looking for a bride for his son Isaac, Yitzchak is his name. Say Yitzchak. Yitzchak. That means laughter. That means pleasure is what Yitzchak means. When he was looking for a bride, he sent Eliezer back to Laban. Eliezer is a type of John the Baptist, and he's a type of the friend of the bridegroom, because he was the friend of the bridegroom. He went over there for one reason, and that's to get a bride for Isaac. And he brought her to him. He had no part in it. He got nothing out of it. John the Baptist baptized everyone that was the original members of the Lord's church, everyone, and he told them about Jesus. He's the forerunner of Christ, and he's the friend of the bridegroom, like Eliezer was in the Old Testament. Okay? And he has no part in the New Testament church, does he? He's not part of it. He's just a friend of the bridegroom. The church, Jesus started calling it out on the seashore of Galilee. And he said, I'll be with you until the end of the age, and he meant that. He said the gates of hell would try to wrestle her down, but would not happen. The church didn't die in the Dark Ages. When you study church history in college, it's going to talk about the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is not the church. I repeat, the Catholic Church is not the true church. Never was. You go back to about 200, from 300 AD on back, and it's going to turn into a Baptist church by doctrine and practice, period. They evolved, and we studied that so far also. We know that Israel's being regathered. There are three major theories of the return of Christ, what we call the imminent return of Christ. Two of them cannot be called imminent. And that's what we call mid-tribulation rapture and the post-tribulation rapture. How many of you heard that? Okay, you've heard that. Mid-tribulation period rapture means that here's the tribulation period. Up there, if you see the tribulation period up on that chart up there, okay? And I have another one also that I probably should have brought for you. But right here, some people think that this is when the rapture takes place. When the rapture takes place, they say is when the Antichrist stands in the Holy of Holy place, and that's when the rapture is going to take place. Okay? I don't believe that to be true. Because when the Antichrist makes a covenant with Israel, at the beginning here, you could count exactly how many days when the rapture would take place, if that's true. Could you not? Because it's going to be right in the middle. So you would know from this period of time right here. So the return of Christ, if it was a mid-tribulation rapture, would not be imminent, would it? Would it? If you can count right there, 1,300 and so many days, it wouldn't be imminent. If the tribulation period, if it was a post-tribulation period rapture, you'd know when it began, you'd know where the end was, and you'd know exactly the day that it would come, wouldn't you? Would it or not? So it wouldn't be imminent. We believe in an imminent return of Christ, or I do. The Church, Valley Baptist Church believes in the imminent, what we call pre-tribulation, imminent return of Christ. That's our doctrinal statement. Let me read this to you. The early churches were keenly interested in the doctrine of the return of Christ. The apostles had held out the possibility of his return in their very day. And the next generations kept alive the blessed hope as something that was imminent. And this young man said what it was? Immediate or threatening to happen at any time. That's what imminent means. The return of Christ. Not until the 400s was there any 400s? The 4th century? 5th century? That's when the idea that the coming of Christ was not imminent, with Augustine mainly. Was there any great exception to this rule? But from the time of Constantine and Augustine onward, this truth began to be rejected until it was finally entirely set aside. It is only during the last, he said 65 years, but we know it's from about 1820s and 30s when some of the great writers in Germany and in America began to teach what we see here on this chart. Okay? Again. He said the last 65 years, but it's the last 100 and something years, okay? Has it been restored to the churches, although there is still much indifference and opposition to it? When the Southern Baptist, now there's another. You know, I don't care what religion it is, when I tell you something about the fallacies of their thinking, we are Southern Baptist, aren't we? I'm an old-time, what you call a Orthodox missionary Southern Baptist. That's what I am. But the Southern Baptist Convention believed at one time that if they could convert the world, that the millennium would come in. And they said, give us so many $1 million and we will bring in the millennium and the coming of Christ. They were doctrinally unsound when they said that. So even an Orthodox, basically fundamental Christianity, group in Christianity can be wrong, period. It wasn't until J. Lewis Guthrie and Ben Bogard and some of the old missionary Baptists began to educate preachers, and they went out and preaching revivals, and people got interested again. John A. Broadus, A.T. Robertson, these are pretty foundational. J.M. Pendleton. These are the people that began to push the idea that God does deal with mankind in different ways and times, and we can really understand, and we can go back to what the church began or started teaching for the first 300 or 400 years. So they went back to the basics. And then the Southern Baptists finally wandered back. You know why the Southern Baptists wandered back? Because those old missionary Baptists brought them back. Of course, all Southern Baptists were missionary Baptists at one time. Now let's go on a little further. 4 things have helped along this attitude. First, the setting of dates, which we just talked about. Talking about, I had a good friend. I talked to you about him writing several books and talking about the return of Christ when Halley's Comet come. I talked to him about 20 years ago. I called him on the telephone and I said, brother, I said, do you have any of those books or any of those tapes? He said, I hope you burned them all. I was a heretic. I said, no. I said, I still use them because there's some real good sound teaching in them. I just didn't believe the Lord was going to come back when Halley's Comet came back. And he said, good on you. He said, I missed the ball. But he was a man, wasn't he? And he was in a sound church and all this kind of stuff. But they get all excited like Harold Camping. Okay? Like so many people that are always talking about something going to bring the 4 blood moons. Something's going to happen. I don't get excited about that. That doesn't affect me at all. Them finding a new universe out there. I tell you what, we've got all kinds of extraterrestrials out there. What are they called? Angels and demons. They're all over. The whole universe is filled with them. Can they materialize? Can they go from one dimension to the other? Of course. Don't bother me at all. When they see a flying saucer or something, I say, well, there was a demonic thing. Whatever, you know. It's possible. All these things are possible. But what are they? They're not some other civilization. There are other civilizations out there. Michael, Lucifer, and Gabriel. Michael is in what? The spiritual realm. Gabriel is in what? Messengers, the intellectual realm. And what about Lucifer or Hillel? He was in the material realm. These are the ones you keep seeing in the material realm. Okay? These are the ones. If you've got a seance, if you've got somebody who's really prophesying, that's from Gabriel's realm. Okay? Let's go on. The setting of dates. The followers of William Miller, 1788 to 1849 of the Massachusetts, expect the Lord to come in their day. They set the date of his return for 1843, the Millennial Dawnist. And Charles Taze Russell came out of the Millennial Dawnist. And the Seventh-day Adventist comes out of the Millennial Dawnist. Who else come out of the Millennial Dawnist? Who? Huh? Herbert W. Armstrong and Garner Ted Armstrong. Those names are almost gone today. They were the world today. Back when I was growing up, you see all that, and boy, they had all this exciting things on there, and it's come and it's gone. So many times. Herbert Armstrong had the habit of going over and going to Israel and going to do this. He believed in what they call the British-Israeli theory, where all the people in Europe were actually Jews. What they call the lost 10 tribes and all this kind of business, okay? He believed in all of that. And, of course, you've got the Mormons looking for the coming all the time, and that the American Indians were black Jews. Well, with DNA now we know that us and Indians, we are Orientals. We are not Jews, period. We're Oriental. We're Asian. All right? The Millennial Dawn is set for the first date. The first date was 1914. And I didn't think it was 1975. The last big date, that's when they started selling all their stuff. I knew people in this that sold everything that they had, got down to where they just were renting and living in apartments, and poured everything they had in these big assembly halls and everything else back at that period of time. And Brother Mike, that came and taught with me when we were teaching on the Jehovah's Witnesses, what the Jehovah's Witnesses teach and everything else, he came in here, and basically he believed that the coming was in 1975, and he just absolutely sold out. And so many of them did, and then it came and it went. Don't put much money on the Lord coming back at any time. But I'm going to tell you something, his coming is imminent. This practice has brought the whole doctrine in dispute and discrepancies all over. Secondly, the fanciful and unscriptural doctrines that have often been held by those who teach the truth of Christ's return. And Christ is coming back, and his coming is imminent. But we've had so much of it crammed down our throats, so much what we call sensationalism, that has soured people, and people have become agnostics, atheists, because of it. And of course the atheists and the agnostics laugh at Christians when they start talking about this. Along with this same thing, with all of this second coming, there was something else that these same cults did. What do you think that might have been? What else did they do? They invented soul sleeping. When you died, you just went out of existence and your soul just slept. We know that that is not true. When you die, when your eyes close in death, your spirit and your soul goes instantly to another realm, either heaven or Hades, one or the other. The one thing that these people, all the Seventh-day Adventists, the Jehovah's Witnesses, basically the Mormons, all of these, and of course don't forget Islam. Islam is becoming very, 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 very radical. They always were radical. Catholicism in Israel. Catholicism believed that they were going to conquer the whole world, and basically they did conquer the whole world, so to speak. They killed between 50 and 100 million Christians, which were Baptists. 50 to 100 million. They took the Bibles out of people's hands. They just, I mean, this is a religion. And look at Islam today. Islam is just like Catholicism was. Catholicism brought in the Dark Ages. Modern Islam is bringing in the Dark Ages again. People don't think. They just believe and scream and holler and give their lives and do all kinds of stuff. Crazy stuff. Insane things. Because they think they're just going to go right into the blessed appearance instead of the blessed hell where they're actually going. All of these people did away with hell, the doctrine of hell. They said, well, if you are really bad, in the end, God will either resurrection give you another chance to believe, which is not true. Or you'll just sleep in the grave if you're really a reprobate or whatever, and you'll be annihilated. That's not going to happen either. You're not going to be annihilated. You're going to be conscious in heaven or hell forever. Conscious. With all of your senses. Thirdly, preconceived notions and prejudices have kept many from accepting the doctrine of the second coming of Christ. The spiritual interpretation of prophets, this spiritualizing away the Bible, as Harold Camping did, as actually John Calvin did, and even Luther, they spiritualized so many scriptures, and that's where we have the replacement theology. Okay? Replacement theology. This second chance, or this probational or probationist idea of annihilation, and you just go out of existence if you're not going to go to heaven, that's from this same group of heretics and cults during a period of time. Let's go on a little bit further. Last week we talked about sleepers in the dust. We talked about the harpage. Say harpage. That means rapture. And then ruomai, that means rapture. And in Latin is rapere. Rapere, our English word rapture, which means what? To snatch away. And a raptor is a hawk or a bird that has talons on it to snatch the prey away. Okay? One verse I didn't go to last week, I'd like to go to this week. Acts 8 and 39. Acts 8 and 39. And Acts 8 and 39. Who out here among you can read Spanish? Anybody read Spanish real well? Young lady, can you read Spanish? No. How about you, young man? Can you read Spanish? Can you read Spanish? Any of you read Spanish? Brother Roger, what?
I think I can read it, but I can't understand all what I'm reading.
All right. Well, I know Brother Roger can read Spanish. And if he can read Spanish, you can do a pretty good job with Latin. Okay? Oh, really? Come up here now. I'm going to put you to work here. All right? Acts 8 and verse 39.
Where's that?
Right there.
Am I supposed to read it in
Yes.
English?
Uh-huh. No, read it in Latin.
Cum altem ascendiscent de aqua spiritus domini raput Philippium.
All right. That's Acts 8 and 39 in Latin. It says, Cum autem ascension de aqua spiritus domini rapuit. All right? And that word rapuit there is from the Latin rapere. Okay? And spiritus, well, I backed up against it, didn't I? All right? In other words, the Spirit of the Lord. The Spiritus Domini. Spiritus Domini. Domini means Jehovah or the great God. okay, Domini. And it says that it raptured Philip. Now let's go and look at that in English. Somebody grab that in English and bring it up here and read it. All right? And here we have the word rapture, or snatch away. We have that. Who has that? Young lady, do you have that in your Bible there?
Are you talking about
Acts 8 and 39. Could you bring that up here and read it for me? Have to get near the microphones because they can't hear you back there. Acts 8 and verse 39. We're talking about a snatching away. And that's what the rapture is. It's a snatching away. And it will happen at the beginning of just prior to the tribulation period. After the rapture takes place, the tribulation period will be upon us quickly. All right? Acts, whichever way you want to come from.
Okay. Right.
8 and 39.
When they came up out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord suddenly took Philip away, and the eunuch did not see him again, but went on his way rejoicing.
All right. Now what happened here is Philip is a deacon in the church. He's a deacon in the early church of Jerusalem, the only church there was at that time. Okay? And there's a eunuch, which actually is related to the guy that carried Jesus' cross. Did you know that? These people are related. Okay, now he's out there reading the book of Isaiah, and he's reading this. He's in the chariot. He's a very high, important official, and he's reading this, and the Lord puts Philip right there where he needs to be. And Philip says, "Do you understand what you're reading?" And he said, "How can I, except some man explain this to me?" So he explained to him about Christ, and he believed. And then he was baptized. Then he was baptized. And when he baptized this man, he had to see this. Deacons can baptize people. Did you know that? Deacon is an elder in a church, so deacons can baptize people. Deacons and ministers baptize people. Well, Philip was a missionary deacon, and he was as a scriptural arm of baptism from the church of Jerusalem. So he asked him if he believed. He said yes. He said, "Okay, can I be baptized?" He said. He said yes. So he took him and he dipped him, and after he came up out of the water, Philip was raptured and taken someplace else. Zip. Now that's a type of the word rapture. He wasn't raptured, he wasn't taken to heaven at that time, but he was snatched away by the Spirit of the Lord. One of these days, the Spirit of the Lord is going to zap us up and take us up. We looked at all kinds of verses. Who were the two people that are actually a type of the rapture in the Bible? Remember who they were? Two people that did not see death. Enoch and Elijah. We have Enoch and Elijah. Now, another thing I want you to understand. Are you enjoying this? Is this okay? Here we have the church age which we live in. We believe we're near the end of the church age. Okay? 1 Thessalonians 4, 16 and 17, and a lot of places, Philippians 3:10, we talked about the rapture last week. Okay? The sleepers in the dust will go before those that are 1 Corinthians the 15th chapter. Verses 40, and then toward the end of it, we talk about those that are in the graves are going to be caught up and changed, or they'll be resurrected, and then those that are in their bodies are going to be changed. The spiritual, or the fleshly, is going to put on the spiritual. We're going to be changed. Well, the tribulation period comes upon the earth. Now, there are at least two resurrections in the Bible. Can anybody tell you about the two? Some churches believe in one resurrection, what they call the general resurrection period. Okay? They think there's only one. They do not believe in the millennium at all. And some very prominent theologians in history did not believe in the millennium. What we call these amillennialists. Say amillennialist. That means no millennium. Okay? Well, we have two resurrections. We have a resurrection right here, where we have the 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter, verses 40 on, and where we have 1 Thessalonians 4, 16 and 17, and many other places. These are just some of the basic scriptures. They're caught up to be with the Lord, and for 7 years they are feasting in the city of New Jerusalem above the earth. Israel's not part of that. Did you know that? Israel gets to go through the tribulation period all the way through. They get to go through it. I've had so many times when I was witnessing, Jehovah's Witnesses said, I don't want to go to I don't want to go to heaven, I want to go to the kingdom. I want to go to heaven, people. I don't want to go through this. You can have it. Some people are going to get saved here, but the rapture's here. The kingdom, there is going to be a millennial kingdom, and a lot of people say the word millennium is not in the Bible. All right? The word millennium is in the Bible. Revelation, the 20th chapter. Revelation chapter 20. Let's go there and look at that. Yes.
People that have passed away, they're going to be lifted too?
Those people, all the people that have died in the past, at least during the church age, maybe those Old Testament saints, maybe all of them were resurrected at Christ's resurrection, or maybe some of them. We don't know that. That's something we just don't really know. But all the people that died during the church age, when the rapture comes, they will break through the earth and out of the waters and from wherever they've been scattered, and they will be taken up just long enough for the live saints to witness it, and they will all of a sudden, they're witnessing the graves open up, and then all of a sudden they're gone. Yeah. We have that. Okay? Now we have this tribulation period, we got that, and in heaven, during this time, there is a wedding feast. How long was a wedding feast in the Old Testament? How long was the wedding feast? How much? 7 days, 1 week. The wedding feast was 1 week long. Remember when Jacob was tricked and he married Leah instead of Rachel? Remember when that took place? And he woke up after he was drunk and he was in bed with his wife and he thought it was Rachel, and he woke up and he was looking at Leah. Well, he didn't like it. And so he went to Laban and he jumped all over and he said, "What's going on here? Why have you cheated me? Why have you done this and done and so to me?" Well, he says, "Okay, I can't give the oldest daughter, the youngest daughter first. You had to have the oldest one. And by the way, according to the book of Jasher, Leah and Rachel were twins. But Leah was the oldest of the twins. So they were pretty much maybe the same age, maybe.
Rachel and Leah was twins?
But Leah was the oldest, okay? That's what the book of Jasher says. And that's a history book. Yes, brother?
Must not have been identical twins.
Well, no. They weren't identical twins. Absolutely weren't identical twins. Leah's eyes would capture a man. She probably had blue eyes. You know, that was something that was just wonderful back then. One of those dark complected and dark-haired girls with blue eyes, those were worth a lot of money, okay? And a lot of horses and a lot of camels and whatever, you know. But anyway, he woke up with her, and he was upset. So he said, "Well, you have to be with her for a whole week. Finish out her wedding week, and then next week you'll have Rachel. You have to stay with her for this week, and we don't want to insult Leah, and then you can have Rachel." All right. The wedding feast was 1 week. According to the book of Daniel, what is the tribulation period called? What is it called? Jacob's trouble, and it's called Jacob's week. Jacob's week. It's called a week of years. A week of years. So this period of time here on the earth is tribulation. In heaven, it's a time of feasting. And here we have the first resurrection, and then we have another resurrection over here. The great white throne, judgment, and the resurrection over here. Okay? The great white throne, judgment, and the resurrection over there. So we have at least 1,000 years between those two resurrections, don't we? If you really want to get it right, it's 1,007 years between this resurrection and this resurrection. Okay? This resurrection is the resurrection, the Anastasia, of all of the lost, all the way from Adam to this period of time. The earth will have on this millennial reign, and by the way, there's no such thing as a millennium in the Bible. The word for 1,000 in Latin is milli, and the word for year is annum. And in Spanish, it's milano, that means 1,000 years, and it's millianos, or annos milli in Latin, and our English word millennium comes from the Latin, and it is in the Bible. The word millennium is in the Bible. Revelation, the 20th chapter. Let's go there quickly. 20. And I saw an angel come down out from the heaven, having the key of the abyss. That means abyss means a bottomless pit. Literally means no bottom. And a great chain in his hand, and he laid hold of the dracon, the serpent of old, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him for a annos mille, for 1,000 years. From this period of time right here to this period of time right here, Satan will have no influence on the human race. And you know what? The human race is still going to be bad. There's still going to be bad people there during that period of time, because it's Adamic. And he threw him in the abyss and shut it and sealed it over him, that he should not deceive. It's really good in Latin. Let's see if I can find it real quick. That's 20. It said, et adprehendet. He's going to apprehend. Draconem, serpentem, antiquum, the serpent of old, qui es diabolos et satanos. The old devil. What does the word devil mean? Diabolos. What does that mean? Diabolos.
Destroyer.
That means destroyer. That's what the word devil means, destroyer. Et ligavet et per annos mille. For 1,000 years. Et missit iam en abyssum. Sounds just like what it got right there, the abyss and all that. That word abyss comes from Greek. The word dracono comes from Greek. The word serpentine here, these are all from the Greek Bible. And then he won't seduce. He et non seductio amplius genetes. He's not going to be able to seduce anybody until the consummation, the consummatir milli annis post hoc oporta illum solvi modico tempore. Temporarily, he's going to be put in this 1,000 years in the great abyss, the bottomless pit. Threw him into the abyss and shut it and sealed it over him, that he should not deceive the nations any longer until the 1,000 years was complete. And after these things, meditate, after this he must be released for a short time. So we've got periods of time here. We've got a 7-year tribulation period of time. We've got something that mentions a church age. Does anybody disagree with having a church age? We have a church age. We're in it. Okay, pretty much here. Matthew 28, 18 through 20 and all that kind of stuff. And we know that Israel was dispersed. At the end of the church age, Israel is going to be regathered, which is happening. That's a real indicator now. Israel is a real indicator. That's something you can so-called bet on. We know we're near the end. How far at the end? We have no idea. I have no dates. People call and they say, when do you think the Lord's come back? And I said, I don't know. That's what they asked me. They said, well, you're a theologian, you know. I don't know. Maybe I'm more honest than some of these. I don't know. I don't know. Period. A lot of things I don't know. Well, the earth is going to have Israel as an administrator on it for 1,000 years. God will use Israel again. But Israel will never be the bride. Never. She forfeited that right when she rejected the Messiah. For 1,000 years, she's going to rule and reign on the earth. Christ will be actually the king, and she will enforce the kingdom on earth. And they will have a Sabbath, and they will have the Feast of Booths every year. All right? The Sabbath and the Feast of Booths. Let me go back to this other little book here for just a moment, and then I'm going to turn you loose on the world. Because of all of the sensationalism of people preaching the second coming, you know what? I don't ever think I ever remember. I never preached a revival on the second coming. I preached on the second coming. I preached the book of Revelation here in this church 6 or 7 times. But I have never set a date. I've always said be ready to go up any time, but plan as if he's not coming this whole year. Plan, but live like he's coming today. Church symbols and literature have tended to make many of these views unassailable. But the chief among the opposition is the unregenerated heart. People don't want to believe in the second coming of Christ because they're not saved. They don't want the Lord to come back and catch them in the state they're in. Only a devout Christian can say, Amen, come Lord Jesus Christ, as 22 and verse 20 says. Unbelievers and scoffers continue to say, where is the promise of his coming? All through the Bible, 300 times in the New Testament alone, not counting the Old Testament at all. Once in every 25 verses, it talks about the second coming of Christ. And then they say, where is the promise of his coming? For from the day that the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning to the creation. That's in 2 Peter 3 and verse 4. Since there is still considerable opposition to this truth, we will well consider it, first of all, the importance of the doctrine. The nature of the coming, of Christ's coming, is imminent. We don't know when he's going to show up. After the coming of Christ, how long is the tribulation period going to be? We'll know that. How long is the tribulation period? 7 years. And those on the earth will know that. They're going to have 70 years of hell on earth. And then after that 7 years period of time is the end, what's going to happen? When you're on the earth during this period of time, you know exactly what's going to happen. After the rapture takes place, we know that tribulation period is going to last 7 years. And after that 7 years, we're going to have 1,000 years of people repopulating the earth. And then what we're going to have? The great white throne judgment. We're going to have this battle here. This battle. This last battle. The battle. What's going to take place in that last battle? When old Satan is loosed out from the bottomless pit. What's going to happen? He's going to go out and he's going to gather up those that will listen to him, humans on earth, that have seen the glory of God, that have seen the rule of God, the powers and the miraculous provision for the 1,000 years, the reconstruction of the earth and the recovery of the earth from the great devastations of the tribulation period. God restores it all. They're going to see all of this power of God, and yet they're going to go with the devil again. The old serpent. He's going to deceive them. They're going to stand up and they're going to have that last battle, and then the Lord is going to totally destroy them with the breath of his mouth, it says. They're going to be burned up and killed in their bodies, and then the Lord is going to resurrect them. Them and everybody else that ever rejected him. And there's going to be a long period of time where the judgment, the great white throne judgment, takes place. And these people will be standing in their resurrected bodies being judged for what they did. You know, you don't go to heaven on your credits of how much good you did. You go to heaven only because Jesus Christ saved your soul. Okay? But a lost person is judged according to what they have done in this world. And they're going to be resurrected. If they were not too bad a guy, they're going to be thrown in hell. But it's going to be a whole lot more tolerable in hell in that place than it is for these terrible people over here. I think some of the places in hell for those that have deceived religious people are going to be the hottest places in hell. And that's those people, religious leaders in the world that have led millions astray and have put them in hell, and yet they were following religious beliefs from the heart, but they were deceived. Those are the deceivers. All right. Do you have any questions before I turn you loose on the world? Thank you for your attention. I hope that you learned something from this lesson, the imminent return of Christ. And if you want these classes on CD or DVD, they're available. I'll get them to you. You can go out and look at them on the internet and go out and do something eternal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you think the Lord's taken resurrection?
Yes, he has.
Okay.
He's definitely taken reservation.
I had met a guy that just went in a church. I invited him to Sunday school class, his first time at church. And he said the reason he was coming to church is he wanted some answers. I said, what kind of answer are you looking for?